We are in mourning at the On the Whistle podcast because the Springboks were eaten alive in Ellis Park by the visiting Wallabies. I think they ate them alive with even more ferocity than I saw my guest, Caleb Mutombwa, devour his pudding before coming live into this pod. Yes, you're at the On the Whistle podcast, Africa's biggest braai. We bring you all the latest news and analysis around sport with a focus on football and rugby. I'm your host, Nabbi, and joining me, eating a very big slice of humble pie, Caleb Mutombwa. Caleb, how are you doing, brother?
I'm good, but I think you had the bigger slice of humble pie with your predictions. I refuse to be dragged along this hole that you dug yourself. I did say I didn't. Yeah, let me not get into it. We both
typical Zimbabwe, running away from the fire, then to it, right in retreat.
I did say the Springboks would win, so I'm having humble pie. But I also think it's a nicely tasting humble pie because who doesn't love a strong Australian side?
Me.
I'm a rugby fan first before I devote my life to the Springboks. I'm a rugby fan first.
No, that's fair. Look, I'll always say the best halfbacks that I saw in my generation as a combination, right, were Gregan and Larkham. I never saw better.
Really?
As a combination, I don't think I've seen better. People will talk about Smith and some of the fly-offs he's partnered, but nah.
No, I think
Gregan and Larkham were successful at franchise level, were successful at international level. They did it all.
There was a Monastein Furi Dupria that did things for the Bulls sometimes.
Mornay was a good fly-off, but not elite.
Yeah, he didn't do the business that you'd want in the fly-off.
So that's why I'm saying like combos.
For a year, there was a certain team that wore red in Australia. They just didn't run hot enough for too long, but they did cause havoc. Will Gina and Quade Cooper did cause havoc.
Bro, ballers. Absolute ballers.
Right? Absolute ballers.
They're ballers. Those guys are ballers. Like anyone would love them, right? And I agree.
Was it Danny Cipriani and was it Will Guinea? Was it that Wasps Galacticos? Also ballers. Yes. So there's
again, ballers, right? Ballers. But I just think for the longevity, for the consistency, for amateurs going into the professional age, those dudes set the benchmark. So for those of you listening out there who don't think Caleb knows his rugby or I know my rugby, it's more pitched at me, right, Caleb, than you. I'm just lumping you in. You see, we know a little bit. We know a little bit about rugby.
I need to have my cold pudding to cool down.
So listen, for all of you who've listened in to either give us love, brickbats, or join the banter, you can find us at all our social media accounts. At OTW_podcast on X, on Instagram, and also TikTok. And if you're watching and you want to watch us on YouTube or Facebook, just search for the On the Whistle podcast. And Caleb, we're going to go over in depth the Springboks versus the Wallabies this weekend. We'll also look ahead to New Zealand and Argentina. But before we go there, I think it behooves me to go to the mailbag. Because for those of you who didn't listen last week, Caleb was very modest in his prediction. He said the Springboks would win, but it would be closer than expected. I said the Boks by 15. I really thought they'd win by 20. And after they were 22-0 up within the first 20 minutes, I thought I was onto something. But for those of you who've been sending me loads of messages across all our social media handles, I just want to take time to acknowledge you and say thank you for the love, for the disparaging remarks, for those of good humor. We're going to take a comment from Tokena, and Tokena said, take the loss on the chin, bro. Every team has their ups and downs. I certainly have. We had Sean Mack 2022 say, the Lions team was pretty average, 4 question marks. Tell that to them and see what they say. I'm not afraid to do that, Sean. I thought they were average. Then we had Hamo the engineer. Make sure the apology is as loud as the disrespect shown. So many comments, so little time. There was another one from RD Savage, and this made me laugh a little bit, Caleb. He said, you lost the cricket, you lost to Australia, that are ranked 8th in the world, And then DDP, who's Drickus du Plessis, lost his UFC belt.
Bunch of losers.
Caleb, you've heard some of the comments out there. I mean, are people on the money? Was I overconfident? Was I too arrogant? Was I missing something?
Look, let's be honest. I don't think there's any oracle who saw this coming. I think if anybody sees this and says to us, we saw this coming, I think they are trying to jump on a bandwagon and grab plaudits, which they did not really work for. Nobody saw this coming. I'm reminded of was it Roma versus Barcelona in a Champions League knockout game
Oh, yes.
where Peter Drury goes, the unthinkable is unfolded before our eyes. This is not supposed to happen. This shouldn't happen. This is happening. I think that's more like what happened at Ellis Park. There was no Manolas, but there was Swali'i, you know. I think we need to give massive credit to the Wallabies. I think it's just showing how improving they've been over the years, you know. We saw the England win when they came down to Twickenham last year. They didn't quite pick it up the entire autumn series, but they got thumped by Scotland, but they showed what they are about against England. Then they played Fiji, looked a little bit undercooked. So did they in the first test against the Lions. Then they've just been going strength from strength, right? Though Joe Schmidt is a smart coach that knows how to plan, but also they've been an excellent line-out stealing pack. And I think Jeff Parling deserves massive shout-out for the work that he's done. I know he's moving over to Leicester Tigers, coming back to England. So there is also that, but they've had some heroes in that pack. Nick Frost, Harry Wilson, that's a captain's knock that he played on Saturday. You look at the Angus Bell, whoa, brilliant, you know. So there's Dylan Peach before he went off. Lenny Kitau just solid and imperious in that midfield. We started to see some of the Suali'i touch, why he's worth all of those millions that Australian rugby have paid to league to get him back. And I think we have to give credit where it's due. I thought the Wallabies were fantastic. I don't know what was said at halftime or what was in the pickle juice at halftime for the Wallabies, because that just injected some energy, some belief, some pace, some gastro. And you could see when Rassie Erasmus and Sia Kolisi...
I wish it injected gastro.
I see what you did there. The Springboks were not up to pace in the last, since the 20th minute, you could argue. And they were made to look bad. They lost lineouts. The breakdown was a shambles. Passes went array. And I know people have a scapegoat that they're willing to put on the chopping block. But I think it was a system and a belief challenge, but also a Wallabies team that was on fire. I think we need to be really careful about, the Springboks were so bad, and forget that there were 23 men who were wearing gold who were pretty much on point for 60 minutes of that test match.
Caleb, I think that's a marvelous analysis. I think it's very accurate in many ways, but I'm going to disagree with a lot of it. Not for the sake of it, but because I truly believe, and you'll say, but you make a contradiction here. You say I said good stuff and now you're about to go against it. Because if you watch the first 20 minutes of that game, you would understand why I had picked the Springboks as a 15-point winner, being conservative.
Yeah.
They were physical. They knocked the wind out of them. They got the crowd going, and they were ruthless in taking their points. I have not seen a Springbok team game manage so badly since what I saw a year before in Argentina, where they made a similar fast start. People always make the point, Caleb, that the Springboks need to stick to their strengths. So what are their strengths? Bruising forwards, grind out the wins, play the percentages, kick deep, don't play expansively. There have been so many people this week who have been saying, Rassie needs to lose this expansive approach. He needs to kick it to touch. I'm not necessarily saying that. But what the Springboks do well, and where the Springboks excel, is when they play a territory game that's based on scoreboard pressure. That is the DNA of this successful team. Scoreboard pressure. At 22-5, I'm flummoxed. Why we don't take a penalty just before halftime and make that score 25-5. Australia score very quickly after the break. They make it 25-12 then. We get a penalty shortly after that, make it 28-12. And if Manie had kicked his penalty and not been spooked when the referee said, you have 20 seconds, then we're 30-12 up. And it's still a mountain that's too hard to climb psychologically for those Wallabies. Throw in the fact that the Springboks then lose momentum. They're trying to chase the game, and they play directly into the hands of a Wallabies team that can then capitalize on mistakes. And the Wallabies team did that exceptionally. Sueli's interception, and I'm going to bring you in after this, Caleb. It's very easy for him to make that choice. Why? Manie only plays one type of game. He attacks that advantage line and he moves the ball coast to coast. And a lot of my frustration was not just at Manie, because I don't think Manie is a player who has a plan B and can in-game adjust quick enough to that. I don't think Manie made the right decisions. I think he pushed and pushed and pushed at his game, which was not the game plan we needed to execute on. So a lot of this defeat was the fact that our general at number 10 couldn't change the game himself. And Rassie had no insurance on the bench because there was no Polly to come on to do that. Or even someone like Sasha Feinberg and Mgomazulu, who does make mistakes, but I feel like Sasha, with his youth, even though he's very young, would have adjusted better to that situation. The Wallabies knew what to expect from Manie, and they capitalized on it. This is exactly what happened in Argentina last year. And yes, people will remember what Manie did on the return leg in South Africa, where Argentina went off the field. The Boks played beautiful running rugby. If I'm correct, it was Eben's 100th test. Was it in Polokwane or Nelspruit? And they won. And I come back to this. The Springbok team needs to focus on scoreboard pressure and territory. And of course, if they want to bring aspects of the running game in, go ahead and do it, because I love it, right? I love the running game. So I'm not trying to say don't do that. And when you have somebody with the intelligence and know-how of Tony Brown and Mazwandile's stick in your coaching setup, you're going to want to utilize those guys to get the backline plays. But the in-game management, and I point my biggest finger at Manie, was really poor.
So I disagree with that, primarily because the Springboks in the first 20 minutes kicked the ball in the air and retained kicks through Eben Etzebeth and Kenan Moody. 1,000 caps on the first 15. Nobody thought that we need to keep doing the same thing. They went away from that. And I don't think that's a Manie thing. That's a system thing, number one. But number two, even if Manie doesn't throw the intercept passes, the Springboks didn't dominate in the areas of the games after that 22nd minute that allowed them to play that scoreboard game. They lost all their lineouts. Well, not all, but a lot of them. It went to
they're
shambles.
terrible. You're 100% right.
They didn't scrum anybody, you know. They didn't dominate anyone at the scrum, so they couldn't pressurize there, kick for the line out. If they did, they're losing the line out to Nick Frost. So I don't think they could have played that game anyways with the way they were in the shambles. So Manie had to try and find other ways to score points, which means he had to play flat to the line. Right? I understand he didn't have a particularly good 40 minutes after the first 40 minutes, but I also don't think he is the poison. Like we won a quarterfinal with that dude against France, I always remember, and he played brilliantly. I know he was given the shepherd's crook in the semi. The point I'm trying to make is, I think it goes back to the point I think I made in the first episode that I was here, is cohesion. I think the understanding between 10, 12, and 13 with the amount of chop and changing that has happened has put players in difficult positions, where I think if it's Andre, Dilendi, and Krill, that pass never gets made because Pollard knows Dilendi or Krill aren't there. You know what I'm trying to get to. But secondly, I think rugby is a game best played from a position of humility. I for the Springboks in particular, I've never seen a Springbok team do so well when they go in as favorites. The game has to somehow go against them for them to bounce back. They lose in Argentina, they smash Argentina at home the next week. They're favorites for the bookies had New Zealand favorites for the Rugby Championship, but everybody kind of saw the Springboks as it's their tournament to lose. They drop. When they have backs against the wall, you see the best of them. But I also think we forget to realize that the game is shifting towards attack. 2019, 2018, 19, 2020, 2021, teams were playing grinding rugby, waiting for a counter attack and pouncing, and everybody was using a line speed sort of a defense. And then great attacking coaches came on and found a way to breach the attacking defense. We saw Ireland breach it with Andy Farrell and his team. New Zealand found a way. They managed to score tries against us on the flanks. And I think Rassie knows that the game is moving towards an attacking sense. And the Springbok need to build that particular way of playing if they're going to stay within the top two, top three echelon of the game. And I don't think that's a short sightedness. That's how rugby sort of like cycles over the years, right? There's a time when everybody was doing the Brumbies. You remember when Brumbies
Of
came
course.
with the rugby league moves and everybody just adopted that. Then it shifted
Face play,
to
face play, ball
yeah.
retention.
Then it shifted to the 1-3-3-1. I think at some point, which was introduced by New Zealand when they had Steve Hansen in that
Mhm.
crew. Then sort of like line speed defense dominated everybody when Sean Edwards was at Wales, Jacques Ninaba was in South Africa,
Mhm.
and every team was just doing a rushed line speed, and then teams found a way to break the line speed by either going after the flailing arms or getting the ball wide very quickly. I remember Severy scoring that try in the 2019 World Cup against the Boks. And I think the challenge that's happening is it's a game plan that's taking time. It's a game plan that's taking time for them to A, problem solve within the game plan, but B, problem solve outside the trusted and understanding combinations that are there. Eddie Jones went through the same thing with an England side that had gone to the World Cup final,
Mhm.
which he started to revamp in between World Cup years. Everybody went, "What is this?" I think Rassie is right. They were Canaan with an expletive word after that, horrible. But I think it's testament to what they're trying to do. We never saw that coming. Wallabies played well. I don't think anyone deserves the blame for that, except maybe you could argue the coaches. Why did the players
No,
not go back
sure.
to a long kicking game?
I'd agree the
I
coaches
also
need to
don't
bear
think
the
that loss
brunt of
has
this too.
affected selection this weekend. I don't think it's mattered, really.
So there's obviously been 10 changes, Caleb.
Yeah,
My view is that, look, to me, the fact that you don't have the likes of Manie there and Andre Esterhazen,
yeah.
or the fact that they've been punished for bad
Have
performances the
they?
week before.
Have they?
Now, well, I'm basing that on the fact that Rassie said earlier, said after the game on Saturday, he said, "Look, we had a team that we had selected for this game in Newlands, but given this result, we're going to have to relook at our team
That
and what we field." So maybe he's played a mind game, and this was always meant to be the team,
I think it
but but
was.
I don't necessarily think so. I think the
I
forwards he's also changed things up there.
we've never seen him make a knee jerk reaction. Manie Libbok technically lost them a test match in Argentina. He started the next game. I think this was always the plan. If that were the case, Lud was particularly not impressive.
Hmm.
You know, um, I'm not quite sure what Kwaka brought off the bench. We technically lost the breakdown. We haven't seen Franco Mostert at flank in a while. I genuinely, I genuinely just don't think this is a reaction. I just think that's the plan he had, and it's just a shame that he's had. Like, do you think Andre Pollard and Sasha Feinberg Gomezulu are not going to be involved this week? Like,
No, I think 100 for sure, but there's a case to be made that Zulu might not have been.
I don't think so. I think he's being targeted for the second New Zealand game. So he plays now. I think it's going to be a combination of this backline plus last week's forwards, maybe with a Bongi Bonambi shift there. I'm not sure. Are going to start
Mm.
the first game in New Zealand. And then it's going to be maybe with a sprinkling of a Cheslin now because of injuries and stuff like that. But I don't think that there's been a knee jerk reaction. I don't think that's Russ's way. I think the team would have been told, barring injuries, this is who we are playing. I this is a difficult thing to say. If I take you back to 2023 World Cup, the Ireland game, it was massive, yes,
Mm.
but I don't think Rassie cared. You can hear him in Chasing
Really?
the Sun where he said, I want you guys to think about Scotland, 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 Scotland. Because he knew if they beat Scotland, if they lose to Ireland, it doesn't matter. The toss up in the quarterfinal
Mm.
was either New Zealand or France. That doesn't really matter. Whoever you play between those two. Like, I think it didn't matter. I'm not saying a test match doesn't matter for him. I think it's important, but I think the planning matters more, you know, where in this moment, I think the planning of what's coming in 2027 and a Nations Cup in 2026 matters more. He wants to see, okay, so now he knows Fassi, Damien Willemse, Edwill, and that crew cannot problem solve. We need to teach them to problem solve when games start to slip away from them. Unlike the team that came on against England in the 2023 World Cup in the second half,
Mm.
Sia and Eben and all those people were on the bench when that penalty was won by Oaks, Kwaka on the floor, Andre kicks the poles, those guys were able to problem solve. And I think that's what they're getting to. And I think he's disappointed with the way. I think what disappointed him more is you can lose a game from 22-5, but you shouldn't lose it like that and lose it by
Mm.
10 points. I think if
But,
that
but
score was
but that's why I come
24-22,
back to game management and decision making, right? And
yes.
I'm putting a lot on Manie because it's 10. Your fly half is your general and he guides the team.
What
But I
does he
don't think
do when
Jesse.
folks are
Let me
losing
let me
lineup?
continue. I don't think Jesse Creel was particularly impressive. I
No?
think again Jesse was incredibly poor, and he's somebody who I think is a fan favorite, is a Rassie favorite, but nowhere near the class of what Lucanio Am in 2019 could give you, right? And I wonder if it's time for them to start exploring other options at 13, right? Not necessarily replacing Creel, but seeing who else can play in that position. Because he couldn't problem solve. He couldn't rein it in. He couldn't lead it from 13
I
either.
don't know. They were absolutely. I don't think they could problem solve. I don't think if you bring Dan Carter
With,
there, Aaron Smith, I don't think they
no,
could.
but
When
with
your
the greatest
forwards
of respect,
absolutely get
the problem
plastered in the
solving is very
paper.
simple. We're going to try and keep it a bit tight. That's what you're doing. You're not throwing errant
They were
passes.
getting beat.
Yes, but there's time. Good teams, they find a way to take the 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes to just find their feet, catch their breath, start to think. That team panicked. They panicked.
No, I think Rassi mentioned it. They got out passioned, and because even if how do you steady the sheep when the ball goes in the breakdown and you're getting beat? The next thing you
That's
get the
fine.
ball, you're
That's
trying to
fine.
avoid it to
But
get into the
but Manie
breakdown.
didn't need to throw the pass he did. This is what I'm trying to say. And there were countless other examples of that. So I stand by the in-game management is bad. But let's turn it to this weekend because we'll bring it to prediction time, and I'm going to put one out there, and let's see if we're closer on our predictions this week or further apart, Caleb. I think the Boks play in
Yeah,
a very wet, rainy environment that is Newlands. I think the weather's going to be that way inclined. He's picked a heavier pack, I think, with regards to the weather, and I think he knows why he's made those selections up front. I think the Boks win. I think they win somewhere between 6 to 10 points. I think it's closer. I think they play more conservatively. I think the Wallabies have played their final the week before, and I think this week the Boks win in an uneventful game at Newlands.
I think Newland's a different. It's a different venue. It's going to be wet. It's going to be nasty. It's going to be staying in the forwards. I think I did predict that the Wallabies win one, the Springbok lose one. And by virtue of us not collecting any bonus points on Saturday, it means New Zealand have won the Rugby Championship.
Agreed.
And I
I
think
think
that's
your
what
assessment's spot on
I
there.
think. I think that's what it is. There's no way I see New Zealand not picking up any points against South Africa in New Zealand or against the Wallabies. Or maybe the Wallabies have got the secret portion now. They're going to go beat New Zealand and win the Bledisloe bag.
Yeah. Unless Argentina do something improbable.
Well, did they sleep on the right side of the bed? I don't know. Maybe.
They sleep on the right side of the bed for the Boks.
Yeah. Well, they've done New Zealand a couple.
No,
They've
twice.
beat New
They've done
Zealand
them
once.
twice. You're right. You're right.
So one in Australia and one at home in New Zealand. So
Is there an alternative universe where the Pumas win this one?
no, they lose both in Argentina. Wallabies beware, Springboks beware. The sleeping beast called Argentina might awaken when you play them. I don't think that happens. I don't think it happens. I think there will be the lost Pumas this weekend. I know they were in Dublin, the win Pumas when they beat the Lions, but there'll be the lost Pumas in Buenos Aires this weekend.
I feel you, Caleb. I feel you. I think, when we go back to our tournament predictions, which is probably where we'll leave the pod today, I'd said the Springboks were going to not only beat the Wallabies by 15 points, and I was being conservative in my mind. I said the Boks would win the Rugby Championship in 5 games. I definitely don't see that happening now. Who do you think? I think I think you said it was too tight to call between New Zealand and South Africa. But given there's no bonus points like you've mentioned earlier, do you feel this is now New Zealand's tournament?
New
For
Zealand, I would put South Africa in second, Australia in third, Argentina in fourth.
There we go. Some live tracking all there for you. Caleb, it was fantastic chewing the fat with you. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. And for those of you listening out there, please leave a rating, leave a review, ask us questions. We want to build this community, and everyone is welcome around Africa's biggest pride. Of course, you can find us at our social handles by searching for the On the Whistle podcast on YouTube and Facebook, or on X, TikTok, or Instagram. Just find us at OTW_podcast. Caleb, it's been a pleasure chopping it up with you. And for those of you listening out there, Salagashle for now.